Deep in the heart of the densest, most foreboding forest in North America, there existed a place untouched by civilization. It was a place where the trees grew so close together that sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, casting the forest floor into an eerie twilight. This was where a group of friends decided to embark on a camping trip that would forever haunt their nightmares. Ethan, the adventure enthusiast, had heard rumors of an ancient abandoned campground hidden deep within the woods. He convinced his friends, Sarah, Jake, and Emma, to join him on this off-the-grid expedition. Armed with backpacks, tents, and an old map that Ethan had found in his grandfather's attic, they ventured into the ominous wilderness. The forest swallowed them whole as they followed the vague trails on the map, guided by little more than their determination and the occasional caw of a crow. The atmosphere grew more oppressive with each step, the air thick with the scent of damp moss and decaying leaves. By nightfall, they reached their destination, the overgrown remnants of the long-forgotten campground. The clearing was eerily quiet, save for the faint rustling of the trees, which whispered secrets to those who would listen. Setting up their tents, the friends laughed and shared stories around a crackling campfire. As the flames danced in the inky darkness, they failed to notice the strange symbols etched into the trees surrounding them. They were marks from a forgotten age, symbols of protection against something they could not comprehend. The night deepened, and the group retired to their tents, with the shadows closing in around them. In the dead of night, a chilling sound echoed through the woods, a mournful wail that sent shivers down their spines. They stumbled out of their tents, searching for the source of the haunting cry, but found nothing. Ethan dismissed it as the cry of a nocturnal animal and urged his friends to go back to sleep. But sleep proved elusive, as strange and unsettling occurrences plagued their camp. Unseen hands brushed against their tents, and eerie whispers filled the air. It was as if the forest itself was trying to tell them something. With the dawn came relief, and they decided to explore the area, hoping to uncover the source of the unsettling disturbances. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin hidden amongst the trees. It was a forgotten relic from a bygone era, and they couldn't resist the urge to investigate. The cabin's interior was a time capsule of decay, with ancient furniture covered in tattered, dust-covered sheets. Curiosity got the best of them, and they began to rummage through the items. In an old, faded diary, they found cryptic entries hinting at something dreadful lurking in the woods, something that preyed on lost souls and lured them into darkness. Growing more uneasy by the minute, they decided to leave the cabin and return to their camp. As they retraced their steps, the forest seemed different, distorted, as if the very trees conspired to disorient them. Panic set in when they realized that they were lost, their surroundings eerily unfamiliar. The sun sank below the horizon, and the forest was cast into a twilight of confusion and fear. Strange figures moved in the shadows, and the mournful wails of the previous night returned, louder and more malevolent. They felt an oppressive presence all around them, and their sense of dread intensified. In their desperate search for an escape, the group came across a clearing in the forest. In the center, they discovered a circle of weathered stones, each etched with symbols identical to those on the trees near their camp. It was a place of power, a place of ancient rituals, and in the center of that circle stood a gnarled, twisted tree, its roots sinking deep into the earth. As they approached the tree, they realized it was not just a tree but a gateway to another realm. Ethan, tempted by the unknown, reached out to touch it. At that moment, the forest erupted with a cacophony of rage. The ancient symbols etched in the trees blazed with an eerie light, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The tree came to life, its branches contorting and reaching for the intruders. In a horrifying twist of fate, Ethan was ensnared by the tree's branches and pulled into the darkness beyond. The forest itself seemed to devour him, leaving behind only a distant, agonized scream that slowly faded into the night. Terror gripped the remaining three friends, and they fled in blind panic, racing through the labyrinthine woods, pursued by unseen horrors. The forest itself had turned against them, becoming a malevolent force that sought to keep them trapped within its dark heart. Hours turned into days, and they were consumed by exhaustion and fear, their sanity slipping away with each step. They wandered deeper into the forest, their once bold spirit broken by the relentless torment. In the end, it was Emma who stumbled upon a strange, moss-covered stone. With a last glimmer of hope, she touched it, and the world around them unraveled. They found themselves back at the campground, as if they had never left. But the forest had not released them without a price. The horrors they had witnessed had left their mark, a deep scar on their souls. The friends never spoke of their harrowing experience, for they knew that the deep forest held secrets beyond human comprehension. The world would never believe the truth, and they were left with only the haunting memories of a camping trip that had gone horribly awry. And so, the ancient, malevolent forest continued to guard its secrets, luring in those who dared to venture too close and swallowing them whole into the abyss of the unknown. It was a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, a place where the deepest fears of the human soul were brought to life in the heart of the deep haunted woods. Story 2. Deep within the heart of the Blackwood Forest, a place where legends whispered of ancient spirits and unspeakable horrors, 5 friends embarked on a camping trip that would push the boundaries of their sanity. The group consisted of Sarah, the adventurous leader, Mark, her devoted boyfriend Lisa, a self-proclaimed nature enthusiast, Alex, the skeptic who scoffed at superstitions, and Emily, the sensitive soul who had a penchant for the paranormal. They arrived at the forest brimming with excitement, their backpacks filled with gear, and their spirits high. Their campsite was nestled beside a crystal-clear lake, its surface mirroring the dense, towering trees that surrounded them. The sun cast long shadows as it dipped below the horizon, and the forest came alive with mysterious sounds. Sarah, the fearless leader, regaled the group with tales of the forest's dark past. "They say this place is haunted," she grinned, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Whispers of lost souls, vengeful spirits, and a portal to another world." "But you know, I don't believe in such nonsense." The group laughed, dismissing the eerie tales as campfire fodder. As night fell, they huddled around the crackling fire, sharing ghost stories and toasting marshmallows. The stars above were obscured by the dense canopy, and the forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something to stir. Their laughter turned to unease as they noticed strange symbols etched into the tree trunks around their campsite. Alex scoffed, claiming it was the work of local pranksters, but Emily's eyes widened with fear. She recognized the symbols from a book of dark folklore she had stumbled upon in a dusty antique shop. A chill settled over them, and they decided to turn in for the night. Mark and Lisa retreated to their tent, while Emily and Alex each crawled into their own. Sarah, however, lay awake, staring into the impenetrable darkness. A strange sensation enveloped her, as if the forest were calling out to her. Unable to resist, she ventured into the woods, her footsteps barely making a sound. The ancient trees seemed to close around her, their branches entwined like skeletal fingers. She stumbled upon an eerie grove hidden deep within the forest, illuminated by an eerie, pulsating light. In the center of the grove, she found a standing stone, covered in cryptic symbols. An overpowering force drew her closer, and she reached out to touch the stone. As her hand made contact, the ground quivered, and the very air itself seemed to hum with a spectral energy. The forest awakened in fury, and Sarah was swallowed by a whirlwind of leaves and shadows. The grove vanished, leaving no trace of her presence, as if she had been consumed by the ancient spirits that dwelled within the forest. Back at the campsite, the remaining friends awoke to a deep sense of foreboding. Sarah's absence was unsettling, and they decided to search for her. Armed with flashlights, they ventured into the pitch-black forest, calling her name into the impenetrable darkness. Their voices echoed through the woods, but there was no response. The forest, it seemed, had claimed her. Panic gnawed at their hearts as they continued their frantic search, but soon they realized that they too had become disoriented. The forest had shifted, changing its very geography, trapping them within a labyrinth of trees and shadows. As hours turned to days, their supplies dwindled and their hope waned. They heard strange, otherworldly voices that whispered from the darkness, urging them to turn back. But they pressed on, driven by the desperate need to find their friend and escape the forest's clutches. Their flashlights flickered and died, leaving them in utter darkness. Alone and terrified, they stumbled upon the same eerie grove where Sarah had disappeared. The standing stone remained, and Lisa, with tears in her eyes, reached out to touch it, hoping to find answers. In an instant, a blinding light enveloped her, and the forest unleashed its wrath. Mark and Emily watched in horror as Lisa's body contorted, her screams echoing through the night. She was consumed by the same malevolent force that had taken Sarah. With no other choice, Mark and Emily fled from the grove, plunging deeper into the forest, guided only by the distant sounds of running water. Their journey became a nightmare of endless torment, as the forest itself seemed to torment them. They heard the voices of the lost souls that had been claimed by the woods, their haunting cries echoing in their ears. Finally, they reached the edge of the forest, stumbling out of the trees and into the bright daylight. They were free, but they were forever scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The forest had taken two of their friends, and they would never know the fate of Sarah and Lisa. The remaining duo returned to civilization, but they could never forget the deep forest and the unspeakable horrors it held. The legends and whispers were real, and the forest was not just a place of trees and shadows, but a living entity, a portal to a world of nightmares. Their camping trip had turned into a living nightmare, a tale of terror that would haunt them for the rest of their days. The Blackwood Forest had claimed its victims, leaving behind only the echoes of their screams and the chilling knowledge of the darkness that lurked within. Story 3. In the heart of the Pinecrest Forest, where towering trees created a dense, tangled canopy, 5 friends embarked on a camping trip that would unravel their deepest fears. It had been Sarah's idea, a lover of nature and adventure. Her friends, John, Maria, Dave, and Lisa, had reluctantly agreed to join her. Armed with backpacks, tents, and a sense of camaraderie, they ventured into the heart of the forest. As the group made their way deeper into the woods, the world around them transformed. The air grew heavy, and the light struggled to pierce the thick canopy above. The once cheerful atmosphere turned eerie, and the forest floor seemed to shift beneath their feet. Their campsite was nestled beside a tranquil, moonlit lake. The water's surface was like a mirror, reflecting the towering trees that encircled them. The first night, they sat around a crackling fire, exchanging stories and marshmallow roasts. The laughter of friends was the only comfort in this unfamiliar, unsettling territory. But as the night wore on, unease crept into their hearts. They noticed peculiar symbols etched into the bark of the nearby trees. Maria, an amateur historian, recognized them as ancient runes, symbols she had seen in her research on forgotten civilizations. She couldn't shake the feeling that something ominous lurked in the shadows. Overnight, the temperature dropped, and an eerie silence descended upon the forest. Dave and Lisa retreated to their tent, while Sarah, John, and Maria huddled in theirs. It was then that they heard it, a mournful, spectral cry that chilled their blood. They assumed it was a distant animal, but it echoed with an otherworldly sadness that sent shivers down their spines. The following day, the group decided to explore deeper into the forest, their curiosity outweighing their growing apprehension. They discovered an ancient, long-forgotten cabin hidden amongst the trees. Its windows were broken, and the wood was weathered and warped by years of neglect. Inside, they found remnants of a forgotten existence. Dust-covered furniture, cracked dishes, and a diary from a bygone era hinted at the cabin's last inhabitant. The diary contained cryptic entries speaking of strange occurrences, vanishing shadows, and a curse that bound the forest to the cabin. Maria, the amateur historian, translated the writings with a growing sense of dread. It spoke of a malevolent force that had once been confined within the forest, but was unleashed by trespassers. The cabin was a key to this force, a portal to the horrors that lurked in the heart of the Pinecrest forest. Frightened but resolute, the group left the cabin, their hearts heavy with foreboding. As they retraced their steps to the campsite, they realized that something was amiss. The forest had shifted, its once familiar trails leading them deeper into the labyrinthine woods. Panic set in as they became hopelessly lost, their surroundings distorting and disorienting them. The mournful cry from the previous night returned, louder and more menacing. Shadows danced in the trees, and unseen hands brushed against their tent. It was as if the very forest had come to life, taunting and tormenting them. Desperation drove them further into the woods, deeper into the heart of the Pinecrest forest. Their supplies dwindled, and their flashlights flickered, but they couldn't escape the relentless grasp of the forest. They heard voices, soft and sinister, whispering secrets that no human should know. They stumbled upon a clearing, a place of ancient power, where a circle of stone surrounded a gnarled, twisted tree. The symbols etched into the stones matched the ones on the cabin's diary. The tree's roots reached deep into the earth, and the air was thick with a sense of malevolence. Dave, driven to uncover the truth, touched the tree. In an instant, the symbols on the stones ignited with an eerie light. The ground trembled, and the forest itself came alive, its branches and roots twisting and writhing. Dave was ensnared, pulled into the darkness, his terrified scream fading into the night. Maria and Lisa, horrified, fled from the grove, but the forest pursued them relentlessly. They heard the anguished cries of their friend echoing through the woods, but they could do nothing to save him. The forest had claimed another victim, and it had no intention of letting them go. Days turned into an eternity as Maria and Lisa wandered deeper into the forest, their sanity slipping away with each step. The forest had become their prison, a place where reality blurred into a nightmare. They heard the voices of those who had been claimed by the woods, their desperate pleas haunting their dreams. In the end, it was Maria who stumbled upon a strange moss-covered stone. With a sense of resignation, she touched it, hoping for an escape. The world around them unraveled, and they found themselves back at their campsite, as if they had never left. The forest had released them, but it had exacted a heavy toll. Dave was gone, and their souls were scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The Pinecrest forest held its secrets, and they were left with the haunting memories of a camping trip turned into a descent into madness. The forest's ancient malevolence continued to lurk, waiting for the next group of unsuspecting travelers to venture into its heart. It was a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, a place where the deepest fears of the human soul came to life in the heart of the Pinecrest forest. Story 4. Deep in the heart of the Whispering Pines National Forest, a place known for its deep woods and eerie legends, 5 friends embarked on a camping trip that would test the limits of their courage. The group was led by Emily, a nature enthusiast who had always dreamed of a camping adventure in the remote wilderness. Her friends, Chris, Sarah, Mike, and Lisa, agreed to join her. With backpacks and tents in tow, they journeyed into the heart of the forest, eager to embrace the beauty of nature. The forest swallowed them whole as they ventured deeper into its depths. Tall trees towered overhead, casting long shadows, and the atmosphere grew heavier with each step. The dense canopy blocked out the sun, and the air was thick with the scent of moss and ancient decay. Their campsite was situated beside a pristine, moonlit lake, the water's surface shimmering with the reflection of the towering trees. The friends set up their tents, and a warm campfire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced with the eerie silence of the forest. As the night fell, they gathered around the fire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. Laughter echoed through the dark woods, and they felt a sense of camaraderie. But their mirth was short-lived, as they began to notice strange symbols etched into the nearby trees. They appeared like ancient runes, marking the woods with an air of mysticism and foreboding. Chris, a skeptic by nature, brushed off the symbols as mere graffiti. But Sarah, the group's historian, couldn't shake the feeling that they were something more, something with a sinister purpose. The first night passed relatively peacefully, but the second night was marked by an eerie and mournful wail that cut through the stillness of the forest. It was a sound unlike any they had ever heard, and it sent shivers down their spines. They huddled around the fire, trying to rationalize the unnatural cry as the call of a nocturnal animal. The following day, as they ventured deeper into the woods, they stumbled upon an old, weathered cabin. The cabin was a relic from a time long forgotten, its windows shattered, and its wooden frame warped by the years. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to explore the interior. The cabin's interior was a time capsule of the past, with ancient furniture covered in dust and cobwebs. Among the forgotten belongings, they discovered a diary with cryptic entries. Sarah, the group's historian, deciphered the words, which spoke of a curse that had befallen the forest, a curse born of dark rituals and sacrifices. The more they read, the more their unease deepened. The diary hinted at an evil force that was bound to the woods, an entity that sought to lure unsuspecting travelers into its clutches. They had unwittingly become a part of a dark and ancient game. Leaving the cabin behind, they returned to their campsite, their newfound knowledge weighing heavily on their hearts. As night descended, they realized that they had lost their way. The forest seemed to have shifted, its familiar landmarks rearranged, and their sense of direction twisted by an unseen hand. The mournful wail from the previous night grew louder, its source seemingly closer. Shadows danced among the trees, and eerie whispers filled the air. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped in a nightmarish maze, unable to find their way back to their campsite. As the days turned into nights, their supplies dwindled, and their flashlights flickered. They were tormented by strange, unearthly voices that taunted and threatened them. The forest itself seemed alive, its ancient trees closing in around them. In their desperate search for an escape, they stumbled upon a clearing deep in the woods. At its center stood a circle of ancient stones, each etched with symbols similar to those they had seen on the cabin's diary. In the center of the circle loomed a gnarled, twisted tree, its roots embedded in the earth. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Mike reached out to touch the tree. In that moment, the symbols on the stones blazed with an otherworldly light, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The tree's branches twisted and reached for Mike, pulling him into its depths with a bone-chilling scream that echoed through the forest. The remaining four friends were left in a state of shock, their minds unable to comprehend the horrors they had witnessed. They fled from the clearing, pursued by the forest itself, which seemed to come to life with a malevolent intent. They heard Mike's anguished cries, but there was nothing they could do to save him. As they ventured deeper into the forest, their hope waned, and their sense of time and reality began to blur. They were plagued by the voices of those who had been lost in the woods, their tormented spirits haunting their every step. In the end, Lisa stumbled upon a moss-covered stone. Desperation drove her to touch it, hoping for salvation. The world around them unraveled, and they found themselves back at their campsite, as if they had never left. The forest had released them, but at a steep price. Mike was gone, and their souls were forever scarred by the horrors they had experienced. The Whispering Pines National Forest held its secrets, and they were left with the haunting memories of a camping trip that had gone terribly wrong. The forest was a living entity, a place where reality and nightmare merged, and where the deepest fears of the human soul became all too real in the heart of the deep haunted woods. Story 5. Deep in the heart of the ancient Raven Shadow Forest, a place where the trees whispered secrets known only to the oldest of spirits. 5 friends embarked on a camping trip that would unveil the darkest mysteries of the woods. The group was led by James, an outdoor enthusiast who had heard tales of the forest's otherworldly beauty and eerie legends. His friends, Lily, Mark, Mia, and Ben, decided to join him. Armed with camping gear, they ventured into the forest, eager for adventure and escape from the mundanity of everyday life. As they journeyed deeper into the forest, the world around them transformed. The air grew heavy, and the sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, casting eerie shadows. The ancient trees seemed to watch their every move, and the atmosphere was thick with a sense of foreboding. Their campsite was nestled in a clearing beside a serene moonlit pond. The water was like a mirror, reflecting the towering trees that surrounded them. The friends set up their tents and built a crackling campfire, which cast a warm, flickering light that seemed to defy the darkness of the forest. The first night was filled with laughter and shared stories around the campfire. Lily regaled the group with tales of the forest's history and its legends, including stories of spirits that haunted the woods and creatures that prowled in the night. Mark and Mia exchanged skeptical glances, while Ben listened intently, fascinated by the eerie tales. The second night was different. As the group sat around the fire, they noticed strange symbols etched into the tree trunks near their campsite. The symbols resembled ancient runes, etched with a sense of purpose and mysticism. Lily recognized them from her research on the forest's history and began to feel an unsettling presence in the woods. As the night deepened, they heard a mournful wail echoing through the trees, a haunting sound that sent shivers down their spines. It seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. James tried to dismiss it as the wind, but unease settled over the group like a heavy fog. The following day, they decided to explore the forest further, hoping to learn more about the enigmatic symbols and the eerie cries that had disturbed their sleep. They stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin hidden in the woods, its windows shattered and its wooden structure warped by time. Curiosity overtook them, and they ventured inside. The cabin's interior was a relic from a bygone era, with old furniture draped in dusty sheets and decaying relics of a forgotten past. In the corner, they found an ancient diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. Lily, the group's historian, began to read aloud. The diary contained cryptic entries, filled with warnings about the forest's dark secrets and the curse that bound it to those who entered. It spoke of ancient rituals, spirits, and the malevolent force that had taken root in the woods. As they left the cabin, an oppressive silence settled over them. The forest seemed to close in, distorting the landscape. Panic set in as they realized they were hopelessly lost. The once familiar trails had become an ever-changing labyrinth, a living entity determined to keep them trapped. The mournful wail from the previous night returned, louder and more ominous. Shadows moved in the underbrush, and the forest itself seemed to be closing in around them. They heard whispers, the voices of forgotten souls who seemed to be guiding them deeper into the woods. In their desperate search for an escape, they stumbled upon a clearing at the heart of the forest, a place of ancient power. A circle of weathered stones enclosed a gnarled, twisted tree. The stones were etched with the same symbols they had seen on the cabin's diary. Ben, overcome by curiosity, reached out to touch the tree. As his fingers made contact, the symbols on the stones began to glow with an eerie light, and the ground trembled beneath them. The tree's branches contorted and reached for him, pulling him into the darkness beyond. The forest itself seemed to come alive, its ancient trees shifting and twisting. Mark, Mia, Lily, and James were left in a state of shock, their minds unable to comprehend the horrors they had witnessed. They fled from the clearing, pursued by the very forest that had taken their friend. As they journeyed deeper into the woods, their hope waned and their sense of time and reality began to blur. They were tormented by voices that whispered from the shadows, taunting and threatening them. The forest seemed to be a malevolent force, a sentient being that wanted to keep them within its grasp. In the end, they stumbled upon a moss-covered stone, its surface worn with age. Mia, driven by a sense of desperation, reached out to touch it, hoping for an escape. The world around them unraveled, and they found themselves back at their campsite, as if they had never left. The forest had released them, but it had exacted a heavy toll. Ben was gone, and their souls were forever scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The Raven Shadow Forest held its secrets, and they were left with the haunting memories of a camping trip gone terribly wrong. The forest remained, its ancient mysteries and malevolent force untouched, waiting for the next group of unsuspecting travelers to venture into its depths. It was a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, where the deepest fears of the human soul became all too real in the heart of the deep, haunted woods. Story 6. Deep within the heart of the enchanted grove, a forest whispered of in chilling tales and adorned with ancient legends, 5 friends embarked on a camping trip that would unravel the darkest secrets of the woods. Leading the group was Emily, a fearless adventurer with an insatiable curiosity for the unknown. Her friends, Alex, Sarah, Michael, and Lisa, decided to join her in their quest for a thrilling wilderness experience. With backpacks, tents, and a sense of excitement, they ventured into the heart of the forest. The trees loomed large and ancient, their branches casting eerie shadows that seemed to come to life. The forest floor was a tapestry of moss and fallen leaves, where the air hung heavy with an unspoken history. Their campsite was nestled beside a tranquil, moonlit stream. The water flowed gently, mirroring the towering trees that surrounded them. The friends set up their tents and kindled a crackling campfire, which bathed the clearing in a warm, inviting light. The first night was filled with laughter and camaraderie. They shared stories around the campfire, their voices rising to challenge the hush of the surrounding forest. Emily regaled the group with tales of the enchanted grove, speaking of magical creatures and restless spirits that roamed the woods. The second night, however, was different. As the friends sat around the fire, they noticed strange symbols etched into the tree trunks near their campsite. The symbols seemed ancient, and their presence stirred a sense of unease in the group. Sarah, the group's historian, recognized them from her research on forgotten civilizations, and her unease deepened. As the night deepened, they heard a mournful, spectral cry that cut through the stillness of the forest. The cry was haunting and otherworldly, and it sent shivers down their spines. Michael attempted to dismiss it as the call of a nocturnal animal, but the sound held an unnatural quality that left the group unsettled. The following day, the group decided to explore deeper into the forest, their curiosity outweighing their growing apprehension. They stumbled upon an abandoned cabin nestled amongst the trees. The cabin appeared to have been forgotten by time, with broken windows and weathered wood. Intrigued, they ventured inside and found themselves in a space untouched by the years. Dust-covered furniture and faded belongings hinted at the cabin's history. In a corner they discovered an old diary, its pages filled with cryptic entries. Sarah, the group's historian, began to translate the writings, which spoke of a curse that had befallen the forest. The diary hinted at rituals, dark magic, and an evil force that had taken root in the enchanted grove. As she read, an oppressive silence settled over the group, and they felt as if the forest itself was listening. Leaving the cabin behind, they returned to their campsite, their newfound knowledge heavy on their hearts. The forest around them had shifted, and the once familiar trails had become a labyrinth of twisted branches and hidden paths. Panic set in as they realized they were lost, their surroundings unfamiliar. The mournful cry from the previous night returned, louder and more menacing. Shadows seemed to dance between the trees, and the forest itself appeared to come to life. The group felt pursued, the woods closing in around them. Desperation drove them further into the forest, deeper into the heart of the enchanted grove. Their supplies dwindled, and their flashlights flickered, but the forest's grip on them was unyielding. They heard whispers, soft and sinister, voices that seemed to guide them further into the woods. In their search for an escape, they stumbled upon a clearing deep within the forest. In the center of the clearing stood a circle of ancient stones, each etched with symbols that matched those in the cabin's diary. At the center of the circle was a gnarled, twisted tree, its roots anchored deep in the earth. Emily, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, reached out to touch the tree. As her fingers made contact, the symbols on the stones blazed with an eerie light, and the ground quivered beneath them. The tree's branches twisted and reached for her, pulling her into the darkness beyond. The forest itself seemed to come to life, its ancient trees shifting and writhing. The remaining friends, stunned and horrified, fled from the clearing, pursued by the malevolent force that seemed to have taken control of the enchanted grove. They heard Emily's agonized cries, but they were powerless to save her. As they ventured deeper into the forest, their hope waned, and their sense of time and reality began to blur. They were tormented by voices that whispered from the shadows, voices that seemed to beckon them deeper into the woods. In the end, they stumbled upon a moss-covered stone, ancient and worn. Lisa, desperate for an escape, reached out to touch it. The world around them unraveled, and they found themselves back at their campsite, as if they had never left. The forest had released them, but not without a price. Emily was gone, and their souls were scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The enchanted grove held its secrets, and they were left with haunting memories of a camping trip that had gone terribly wrong. The forest remained, its ancient mysteries and malevolent force intact, waiting for the next group of unsuspecting travelers to venture into its depths. It was a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, where the deepest fears of the human soul became all too real in the heart of the deep, haunted woods.